All right. Release and recharge plate 5. The release position of the main reserve flows with the port A to the chamber A with the rotary valve with the port 9 with the rotary valve with the port L, and then directly to the brake pipe. At the same time that the chamber A flows through the ports A and C to the chamber D with the equalizing piston with the equalizer reserve, while the piston air is from the head of the valve point pipe as flows with the warning pipe R with the rotary valve to the K with the atmospheric with a considerably noise that indicates for the engine man with the handle in the release position attracts the attention of the handle that is left there by mistake. Alright, the main reserve air to the midst of the brake pipe through the port L of the brake valve flows with the distributing valve of the pipe to increase with the pressure with air above the pressure chamber. The equalizing piston 26 to move to the left of the carrying it to the equalizing side of the valve 31 graduating valve with the 28 with the position shown with the valve a groove of the now being the permanent of the pressure chamber is increased until the equal thing that within the brake pipe is provided before described. The action does not release the locomotive brakes because it does not discharge the application of the cylinder pressure. These release pipe is closed with the rotary valve with the automatic portion of the brake valve. The application of the cylinder pipe is closed with the rotary valve with both portions. To the release of the locomotive brakes handled with the automatic portion of the brake valve must be moved with the running of the position plate 2 with the release pipe connected to the rotary valve of the atmospheric through the port G and cavity K and cavity H with the rotary valve, the independent of the portion of the brake valve port G through cavity G of the rotary valve of the automatic portion with the port K with to the EX atmospheric, as in cavity cavity H, the equalizing side of the valve of the 31 distributing valve that connects with the I and W and H of the valve seat in the air application cylinder with the chamber with the escape of the distributing valve with the release of the atmosphere with as the pressure reduces the brake pipe cylinder will force the application of the piston 10 to the left the exhaust valve with the 16 uncovers the exhaust port to D and E, allowing the brake cylinder pressure to escape or in case of the graduate release the reduced little amount of reduced application of the cylinder pressure. As soon as pressure of the brake pipe cylinder reduces the distributing valve to quickly release the valve function, reducing the valve or reduction of the brake cylinder pressure with the chamber above the piston 9 with the connected distribution valve exhaust with the cylinder pressure, brake cylinder pressure underneath the force of the piston upon with the piston steam nut contacts the cap nut which the vent valve with the 4 be unseated with the permitting the brake cylinder pressure to flow with the valve vent directly to the atmosphere. Alright, running position also closes the warning port, stops the direct flow of the air from the main reserve to the brake pipe and chamber D, but the equalizing reserve opens to supply air to these parts of the feed with the valve in the position brake pipe chamber D. Equalizing reservoir is charged and maintained with the standard pressure to carry it out with the feed valve is fully explained in running. Alright, holding after automatic service plate 6. To hold the locomotive is applied with the train brake that is released with the brake pipe recharged with the valve with the pressure to handle with the automatic portion of the brake valve is mounted with the holding position. All ports is registered with the port earning position with the exemption of port P with the release pipe of the application cylinder is closed with any other air pressure which may be application in the cylinder with the previous surface application is then bottled there, preventing the air releasing the locomotive brake cylinder. Therefore, the only one difference in running the holding position is the former of the locomotive brakes are released later is that they are held and applied. Position 7. Alright, sorry. Emergency. Plate 7. When decided to make the shortest possible shape of the brake valve handle is more placed in the emergency position that is opens the brake pipe directly to the atmosphere through the ports L and L, cavity Y and K port, and the covering the emergency reduction for the brake pipe at the pressure cavity K. Y also connects port C to the exhaust port K, allowing the air to pressure in the chamber D, but the equalizing reservoir to escape the atmosphere reduction in the brake pipe pressure for the cause of the take place so much as the rapidly during the service application of the brakes as the air pressure is pressured in the chamber and distributing valve with forcing the equalizing piston 26 quickly to the extreme position of the right sealing the NC casket compressing equalizing piston graduating spring 46. Movement of the equalizing piston of the right it causes the equalizing slide valve of the 31 to uncover the port H and the seating, making the direct opening of the pressure chamber of the application cylinder so that the quickly becomes equalized. The application cylinder valve being small connected with the brake with the pressure chamber of 70 pressure for the equalizes at about 65% pounds. The application cylinder is now connected with the safety valve through the port H within the seat of the cavity Q and port R are equalized slide valve of port L in the seat in the cavity Q and R and port cavity Q and port R equalizing slide valve. are connected with the small port size of so the proportion size of the point maintaining the portion of the automatic brake valve flowing for the main reserve of the application cylinder, which will escape the safety valve at the rate at which the limit of the brake cylinder pressure which will considerably higher than obtained with the full brake service brake application. As a result, the rapid direct equalization pressure chamber and application cylinder pressure of the application piston 20, the number 6KR distributing valve is moved abruptly to the right opening of the application valve of the 54, which reduces the fast buildup of the brake pipe cylinder pressure as described in the automatic service. And the number 6E distribution valve when the application piston moves to the right, the main reserve air permitted with the flow for the chamber A with the port and application chamber B through the port C. Locomotive brake cylinders are explained under this service application. The movable parts of the distributing valve remains at the proportion piston shown as the brake cylinder pressure slightly exceeds the application cylinder pressure when the application piston is 10. Application valve moves to the back of the position of the emergency lamp is shown in plate 8. See figure 81 position number 6E distributing valve of the application portion parts. The release of the emergency brake is brought about with the same manipulation automatic brake valve flowing through the surface application effect of the distributing valve. Some of the different when the equalizing piston is 26, the equalizing slide valve 31, and graduating valve 28 is forced with the release position. The increased by the brake pipe pressure is in chamber P with the application chamber pressure will be cut off and isn't connected with the application cylinder plate 1 having the emergency pressure for the air end, the port W and cavity K, and in port H the pressure application cylinder at 1 to the expanding the application chamber until these pressures are equal, which results from the release of the brake cylinder pressure until the slightly less than applicabilization of cylinder and chamber, consequently releasing the after emergency portion, using the release portion of the automatic brake portion of the brake valve of the brake cylinder and the pressure will automatically reduce about 15 pounds, where it will remain until handling before running position. When piston 26 is moved back into the normal position, spring 46 of graduating 44 back to the position shown in plate 1. If the emergency application is made with the conducting valve of the burst hose of the proportion of the train or operators will be above described, the handling automatic portion of the brake valve should be immediately moved to the lap position to prevent loss of main reserve air pressure. Alright, your independent brake operation. As previously mentioned with the number 14 LE brake equipment operated with the same manner either by the K14B or the K14F, but the brake valve. The only difference between the rotary valve and seat independent portion is the K14F, the brake valve in its quick application position. 2 passages connected during the reducing valve and the distributing valve application chamber. 1 passage within the K14B and the independent release after the independent application. The K14F provides the 2 passages to the distributing valve application chamber, and 1 is provided with the K14B plates, and 9 and 10 show the 2 brake valves are dramatically quickly application position. The 12 and 13 showing the independent brake valve release position, where they are above mentioned differences clearly shown and later described. The function of the application position of the distributing valve with the controlling the flow of the air from the locomotive brake cylinder and described the automatic operation of the movement of the application will actuate the exhaust and application valve depending on the variation in pressure for the application cylinder. The pressure may indirectly control the automatic portion of the brake valve through the movement of the equalizing piston, its slide valve, and the graduating valve directly by the independent brake of the independent portion of the brake valve. Therefore, considering the use of the independent portion of the brake valve with the locomotive brake manipulation, the equalizing portion of the distribution valve may be disregarded altogether, with the application piston considerably as being moved in by the air in the application cylinder controlled directly by the independent portion of the brake valve. The operation of the equipment is a different position of the handle independent portion of the brake valve as follows. Running. Plate 2. This position, which handles the independent portion of the brake valve, shall be carried at all times. The independent brake valve is not used. The cavity H of the rotary valve connects the port G and P, and in the seat, establishing communication through the distributing valve release pipe between the application cylinder distribution valve and the EX. The automatic portion of the brake valve of the locomotive brake cylinder is open to the atmosphere through the port C, D, and E exhaust distribution valve. Alright, your slow application. The only operative difference between the slow application position and the quick application position, which is fully described below, with the size of opening of the rotary valve through the air with emitted with the application cylinder pipe, for the reason that no dramatic is shown with the complete equipment within the handling of the independent portion of the slow application position with the handling automatic brake running position. However, referring to the independent portion of the brake valve as shown in port 14, it will be seen with the port registered in the port T, allowing the main reserve air that has been reduced to 45 pounds by the bypassing of the reducing of the valve with the flow with the ports T and O with the restricted tailpipe to port B through thence of the horse. Thence through application cylinder pipe with the application cylinder to the distribution valve with moving the application piston with the right thoroughly permitting the main reserve airflow through the brake cylinder, building up the pressure there and at the same rate of the application cylinder pressure is being increased. The flow will continue until the pressure brake cylinder slightly exceeds in the application cylinder described in service lap. Since the supply pressure distributing valve is fixed with the regulating reducing the valve with the 45 pounds of the maximum cylinder pressure that can be obtained. Alright, the lap plate 11. Lap position used to hold the independent brake valve applied with the desired cylinder pressurized obtained with the time of the port with the B leading the application cylinder port, G with the leading of the distribution valve, releasing the air brake blanked and with the rotary valve in the independent portion of the brake valve. The application piston of the distribution valve means moves the lap position previously described, and the brakes are thus applied until the further application release is made. As stated above, the brake cylinder pressure of 45 pounds obtained with no further application can be made within this portion of the brake valve. Release plate 2. To release the locomotive brakes of the K14B and the K14F with the valve with the hand with the independent portion of the brake valve placed in the running position with this option opens the distribution valve with the release of the pipe with the port G with the cavity H with the rotary valve with the independent portion of the brake valve with the port Q through cavity Q. Rotary valve with the automatic portion of the K to the EX of the atmospheric, allowing the air to escape from the application cylinder. G with the distributing valve of the atmosphere, the great pressure of the brake cylinder pressure on the other face on the force of the application piston with the release position is shown. The position of the air to be an air brake cylinder pipe escape for the atmospheric through the port C and the D and E. The distributing valve of the exhaust, the quick release in the valve of the function is also explained to the exhaust pressure of the brake cylinder direct to the atmospheric. With the K14F, the brake valve release with the locomotive of the brake is obtained with the moving of the independent brake valve handle. The release position is shown in plate 13. The position in cavity T and the independent rotary V6 of the connection C with the port G and B of the exhaust port K. This opening is the application cylinder pipe with the distributing valve. The release by the pipe exhaust air with the application cylinder G with the passageway H flows with the application cylinder pipe with the independent brake valve exhaust. Also, the equalizing pressure of the slide valve 31 distributing valve in the release position. Plate 2 connects the cavity K connects the passageway H and I, permitting the application cylinder with the flow through the distributing valve release position with the independent brake valve exhaust. Thus, the air exhausted more quickly through the application cylinder pipe at the running position than the application position then the application piston makes a corresponding release of the brake pipe pressure. If the handle is returned to the lap position before all the application cylinder pressure has been escaped, the application piston 10 will remain in the independent lap position. Plate L will show the brake cylinder pressure is related to the little below the remaining application cylinder, causing the exhaust E and D with the holding of the remaining pressure of the brake cylinder. In this way, the independent release of the graduate is desired. Quick application plates 9 and 10. To obtain the quick application of the independent brake with the K14 brake of the valve, the handle with the independent portion of the brake valve is moved to the quick action application position. Plate 9 with the obtained between the ports of the O and B with the larger slow application position, allowing the supply of the air to 45 pounds of flow, rapidly reducing the valve pipe. The application cylinder piston 10 to the right is shown. The distributing valve now operates as described with the slow application. The K14F with the brake valve with the quick application with the independent brake valve is obtained with the same manner as K14 brake valve, except for the addition with the warning port of Z with the rotary valve with the register with the port G with the rotary valve seat plate 10, permitting the reducing the valve with the rotary valve so chamber F with the flow through the distributing valve with the release pipe to the distributing valve through thence the passage I, sliding valve cavity K, and the passage H to the application chamber and application. Cylinder G with the two channels flow with the building up the application cylinder pressure with the operates the application piston to produce the fast up of the brake of the cylinder as described in flow application. Independent release after the automatic service of application plate 12. If the brakes have been applied throughout the train, B means if the automatic portion of the brake valve described in the service application with the and is desired to release the locomotive brakes, the handle with the independent portion of the brake valve is placed from the release position. That opens the application cylinder to provide the atmosphere through the port B and the cavity T and the rotary valve of the port K. With the seat exhaust, the air application cylinder is then free for the flow for the atmosphere through port H with the distributing valve of the application cylinder pipe with the brake cylinder pressure with the chamber B with the application piston with the lap piston B. Plate 11, the release position permitting and brake cylinders pipe to exhaust the port C with the chamber to vents exhausting the atmosphere through port D and E, the releasing the locomotive brakes and now in the operation of changing of the operating condition, either the pressure chamber or the brake pipe, consequently equalizing pressure does not move until release is made to the automatic brake valve. It will be noted that ports T and G of the seats independently portion of the brake valve are connected through the rotary valve, allowing the air to reduce the valve pipe to escape the atmospheric release position. This acts as a warning to the engine man in the case of the return spring is broken and fails to return the handle to the running position. Independent application after independent release, the automatic brakes applied plate 14. If desired not to reapply the locomotive brakes after a release, the train brakes remain handled, but the independent portion of the brake valve is placed in the slow or quick application position. The locomotive brakes are then reapplied as are described in slow application. Equipment and independent control of locomotives in double heading service.